Hi there. Welcome back to Friendly Ties. Today, we are going to talk about not a board game, but a series of board games. A World Series of Board Games. We are going to talk about the World Series of Board Gaming. So today, we're talking about the World Series of Board Gaming, and we can offer a couple of different perspectives on the World Series of Board Gaming because we have four-time ring winner, two-time ring winner from the 2024 World Series of Board Game, 8-time ring finalist. Just awesome. Always, Nick always wins.
Henning.
Nick Henning, everybody. And his number one fan club, you know, after his partner and his mom and other people, us.
No, you're definitely my number one fan club.
Who followed along at home.
So you've been going to Vegas for these last 3 years, and I've been kind of like a fly on the wall. So like what's the elevator pitch on this thing? Like it might sound like I'm like I know but I don't know, but I actually really don't know much about it at all.
Yeah. So it's kind of interesting. I do think that they're still in some ways trying to figure out exactly what they want their identity to be in the long term. But it's gone for 3 years. It's only existed for 3 years, so it's a new board gaming convention.
This is not to be confused with the World Board Gaming Championships, which we've done an episode on.
Correct.
It's a totally different thing.
Yeah, the WBC takes place in Pittsburgh. We've done that episode, or outside Pittsburgh. This takes place in Vegas, and it has more of that kind of like Vegas appeal, like showiness. The big thing when they first came out, and it's still true, you know, they talk about the prizes. They give out, I think it's something like $50,000 worth of prizes. It's maybe even more than that. It's
like
a
chunk of change.
It's a pretty chunk of change, yeah. So it's board gaming for money, which makes it, you know, some folks have like strong feelings about that, and a lot of folks had questions about like what the vibe, what the sense would be like. So I think it'll be really interesting to dive into that in this episode. But I mean, in brief, it's a board game convention. Like there are 16 specific games every year. They sometimes rotate what those games are, but not by a lot. And every day, 4 tournaments fire off. You can only play in one of those 4 tournaments, and it is a single elimination style tournament until you are basically last person standing. If you are the last person standing, you win like a nice shiny glitzy little ring for that event. And then of the 16 people that win these events, they have sort of like a semi-final day where you play like a random game that was one of the 16 games that you didn't win. And then if you win that, you play another random game for the finals and lots of money. So it's a pretty wild format. But of course, if you're paying close attention, you might be like, okay, well, what happens if I don't win? It still is a game convention that has an open game hall. They use the Dice Tower West game collection, so they have like a really, really good game library. And they have been working a lot on developing their side events throughout the years. So like in the first year, they only had like a couple like what they called like outer ring events that people could play in. But this past year, they added in a lot of extra things. Like there was a wargaming tournament that like about 30-ish people took part in. There was there's like what they call Phoenix tournaments, which of course I'm very biased because that's same name as my channel.
Branding.
Except
we're essentially
for the
like,
fact that you couldn't
lose,
play in any of them because you were too busy winning.
I was too busy winning. Yeah, you don't need to rise from the ashes if you never went to ashes in the first place, right? But the idea is that like you essentially can like buy back in and like play in these like sub tournaments, and then like every morning they like paid people cold hard cash for winning these like little mini tournaments that they did on the side. And then they have like a comedian, like a board game comedian that comes and like does a show. So they've been expanding the side stuff as well. And I think they're going to continue to do that because, of course, most people that are at the, you know, some like 50 to 75% of the people that are there are not advancing past the first round.
Knocked out in the very first game, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
That makes sense. How many people are there?
Yeah, I didn't get clear numbers this year. The first year, I think it was like, I don't know, 400-ish, 300-ish. I think this year it's about double that. It's like in the 800 range. Like I said, there's 4 tournaments firing every day. No single tournament, I think, had over like 150 people. So they ranged in size from, I would say, like 50 to 150 players per tournament. So that sounds like, okay, that's only like 400 to 500 people maybe who are playing per day, but that's people who chose to play events on those days. There are people who don't play an event every single day. There are people who come just for the open gaming. So I heard around 800, and that feels close to correct.
So we have done an episode about the WBC, which is like something that's like very close to your heart and you're over the course of your life. And I imagine some people listening to this have heard that episode. I sort of remember it, even though we recorded it. But I guess one big thing that I think about is, what's the vibe difference, when there's money on the line? Because the WBC, it's all about pride, right? There's yeah. But also the WBC is not expensive to attend, and the World Board Gaming Championships is like, that money comes from somewhere, the prize pool, right?
For sure, yeah. The WSBG is a more expensive event to attend. I would have expected, I think a lot of people expected a more like surly, serious vibe, given that there was like money on the line. That couldn't be farther from the truth. They have somehow, maybe it's just that board gamers are amazing. Maybe it's just because it's like what people like or whatever. Or maybe it's like just the way that the staff has like treated folks at these events. But I actually find that players are, by and large, friendly, cordial, excited, in a way that I really was not anticipating. There's a lot more positivity at the WSBG than I thought there might be, based on the idea that we're like here competing for money and you get knocked out when you lose, right? Like I thought people would there'd be more salt on the table or things like that. And I don't generally find that. I find that people are pleasant, chatty. My opponents would like check in with me later on. People wanted to like make friends. I think more than anything else, like people are looking to attend a board gaming convention in a lot of ways. And this, happens to be the one that they've chosen to go to for whatever reason. And that's generally the vibe. It's like people are here to play board games because they love board games, and they're here to be excited. And certainly some of us are a little bit more intense in our competition, but I think most people are there to play and are there to hang.
Yeah.
Compared to the WBC, it's definitely a little bit of a younger crowd. I think that's just because the WBC has been around since the 90s, and a big portion of that convention is like old school Avalon Hill wargaming. So it draws an older crowd that doesn't have anywhere else maybe in the world to play those kinds of games.
Right.
Whereas the WSBG has a lot more of your like popular games, right? Like if I rattled off the 16 games that were there, you'd be like, I know that game, I know that game, I know that game, I know that game. Like they're all very, very popular games.
I think it's important though to point out that like of those games, like they're not all deep, heavy strategy games. Like,
right.
It's like the grand final last year was Splendor. And that, I just remember thinking that at the time, like being like, this is absurd. Like, this is like, are you kidding me? It's all going to come down to a game of freaking Splendor.
Yeah. When have you ever played a $25,000 game of Splendor?
Yeah, exactly. A $25,000 game of Splendor, right? And I remember the year before that, you were playing in the semifinals and you were playing Ticket to Ride. And it's like winning that game. Because everyone in the finals makes money. Like the fourth seat in the finals is still $1,000. So you were playing an $1,000 game of Ticket to Ride, right? And so like, and of course, they do that. Dune Imperium, Great Western Trail, Terraforming Mars.
Gaia Project, right?
There's those games.
Gaia Project was. It was on the Axe this year.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So
see, Arc Nova, Cascadia.
It's all over the place with weight. Yeah.
Yeah, it's all over the place. Wingspan, Raw. I feel like some of these games have so much luck. I don't know how they are in a competition like this.
I think that's part of the conceit. I think that's actually part of the draw. That it feels very live. I think that it's an intentional choice by the staff to pick games that have a bit more volatility to them, that's going to allow anybody to feel like they can come and play this event and win. And the reality is that is exactly what happens.
Yeah, true.
You know, there are people who win these games who are like, they're absolutely stunned all across the board. It's very, very exciting. And I was talking to somebody, like the difference in skill level between someone who considers going to a gaming convention and the best player at that gaming convention is much smaller than the difference in skill level in basketball between me and Kobe Bryant. Like if you play board games, like you could come to this event and win, but like I can't play basketball against Kobe and do anything, right?
Right.
It's a really good point.
I mean, that being said, you are the Kobe of board games, so if somebody else comes there, they might have to go against you.
But then they have the excitement of knocking me down, right?
That's true. It can happen. I have to say, as we were kind of spectating this, and you just like, you kept winning. I mean, you got to 3 final tables, right? This last year out of 4. And I was like looking at the chat, and people were like, "Oh, this Nick Henning, like he's at another final table." And I'm sitting there thinking, I feel so good about how many times you've kicked my butt. I'm like,
oh my god, it was like everything,
right? Everything, you're like,
Nick has beaten me hundreds of times, and I just feel so validated.
I was like, Nick Henning taught me how to lose, like board games. Well, let's actually talk about that for a second, because one of the things that is really cool about this convention, and I really want to like give a shout out to the organizers for this, is the fact that so much of it is broadcasted. This year and in prior years, a good amount of effort has been made to include the board gaming community. And a big piece of that is they have Dice Tower come out. They had Our Family Plays Games. They had Paula from It's Get Dicey. They had a whole bunch of different people who come out. They do commentary on the games. They do live streams of the games. They also, what's really cool is they film the morning award ceremony, which is just awesome because it everyone who wins gets a chance to say a little something, and it's just like a cool way for those of us that are following along at home to, frankly, I feel like I go every year. Like I feel like I have not gone, and like I take it very seriously.
The Nick fan club represents.
It's a role, and I feel like it's a very important one. And, you know, obviously, you know, we're getting the Discord going, but it has been really fun to watch those live streams this year. Like, we had them on because Nick was in so many finals, and then our friend Hung was also in a final, and it was so cool to be able, I think we spent like 3 nights watching this at home, and even my partner, who's not a big board gamer, it's like, okay, we're gonna watch this tonight. So I think that that's really cool.
And
but
you had the
if
chat
you're listening,
too, right?
Yeah, the chat was really cool.
It wasn't just a viewing experience. You were chatting, and like the commentators were responding to the chat. So it's very much.
Should we talk about that? Our Family Plays Games. Little shade. I'm just kidding. We had so much fun. I got like misinterpreted at one point, and they, was just having like this banter moment. They thought I was like calling them out on the rules. I was like, I was calling myself out. It was nuts. It was fun to get up in the chat and stuff. The one thing I will say is that if you're listening, World Series of Board Gaming, last year you posted all the competitors online as they were going through each of the stages. This year you did not, which did make it harder to follow along. And I do think that's one thing that I do hope they add back in the future, because again, it just adds to this idea, these personalities, these people that you see coming
stories,
back,
right?
And things exactly like, oh, that's the ring winner from last year. Oh, that's the her name's Angela, right? Who won it all last year,
Angela,
and, being able to see how they progress through the tournament, because not every game is streamed. Now it was kind of hard to follow along in that way, and I really did miss that, but nevertheless, so much fun.
Yeah, I hope they continue to expand the video coverage, because it is really cool. It's a really cool aspect of the event. It gives it a lot of like visibility that you don't have at any other board convention as far as I know.
Yeah.
I got to ask you something, Nick. Was it a spur of the moment decision to display all 3 of your rings prominently on the table.
Oh, no, that was totally
when
intentional,
you were playing.
wasn't it?
What game was that?
That was in Earth that I had them displayed.
That's right. And you ended up taking the ring for that.
Yeah, I did. Yeah. I bring them with me, and I the first year, I'm not kind of person that like likes to show off or brag very much, despite the fact that we're talking about what I did at this event. So I actually the first year thought about not bringing them, and then like other people were like, "You have to bring them. You have to show them off." They make a really big deal out of it,
right?
and so
yeah,
I felt like I was like going to be doing the event a disservice by not bringing them. And then because a lot of the people that attend this event actually like end up like I have a very tiny strategy channel, right? But because a lot of people that come to this event are like, oh, I want to learn something about this game, a fair number of people like actually know who I am. So there's no way that I'm really going incognito anyway. Mm-hmm. So I decided I would just go the opposite and actually like bring them, place them on the table. I bring a little elephant tchotchke that guards them. He did a great job this year. He's now a bull elephant. Like he's promoted. Like he kills it. Yeah. I'm not like a tchotchke or superstitious person either. But I just started doing it as like a kind of arbitrary thing, and then I was very lucky in the first year. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna keep bringing this stuff back. So yeah, they're always there to intimidate.
I do love this. Like, are there more superstitions and things? Because in that Earth final that we were just talking about, your opponent, one of your opponents, was a gentleman named PJ, who I believe was defending. Was he defending Earth? No, he wasn't.
Earth is brand new.
Oh no, he was brand new to Earth, but he was the Cascadia ring winner last year. That's what it was.
Right. Yeah.
And they started talking in the commentary. I guess they interview you before the games because they had little tidbits about all of you, and they were talking about how he had built a shrine for the cards in his hotel room. Did you see this part of the live stream, John?
I did.
It was so funny. And but it was great because then his girlfriend gets into the chat and it's like, oh no, the shrine isn't. It's on our bed. It was just like wit, and it was so good, and it was making me root for him, which. Except not. I mean, I was having a real hard time there. I was rooting for everyone. That's the problem is that you inherently biased, obviously, number one fan. But you just start rooting for all these people and their stories, and it does make it really fun, when they add that in. But I am curious, is there a lot more of that? Now we've got, elephant, I've got the Earth card shrine. Like, how much superstition are we talking here?
I don't think it's that prevalent. I think people maybe do their little things, but I don't see that many obtuse rituals. I'll put it that way.
It is only 3 years old, so there's time for those to go there. So you were talking about like anybody can come here and win potentially. I mean, we're not like we're not shilling for the board game convention or anything. I think it's an interesting point, but like I also like data, and I know one thing. Like I know this already, but I'm going to pull it out of you. Like. The number of games played of Earth that you did and your competitors, like there's a big difference, right? And like to be at the final table, that means you had already won 3 games in a row, right?
Yeah. You have to. The games are either 3 or 4 rounds, depending on how popular they are. So you've either won 2 or 3 games in a row to get to the final table. Which is kind of my point, right? Like that's not that you can win 2 games in a row. You can win 3 games in a row. Like sometimes you hit a hot streak, right?
Yeah.
That happens all the time. But yeah, I mean the difference in experience levels on that table was one player had played like a dozen games, and I've played probably 200 games. Mm-hmm. Thanks to the glory that is Board Game Arena.
Right. Are all these games on Board Game Arena?
No, not all of them, but many are.
Yeah, it seems like it.
It's definitely, you can tell the difference in the events that are on Board Game Arena versus not.
I do know that for some of them, people like talking about they're ranked this on BGA, they're ranked that on BGA. Yeah. Like, oh, this person's number 5 in the world on BGA, and you're like, it adds to the story to a certain extent. I think.
This is the whole element of it.
The event is definitely starting to pull like a few more sharks. I mean, we also have it actually like does earn the name World. Like this guy that comes from Finland. I played against a quick came from Australia this year. So it does actually have a global presence at this stage.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I do want to take a second, and I do want to look backwards a little bit, because as much fun as we're having talking today, and we're giving you your flowers for the wins you got at this convention. Although you didn't actually win it all. You won 2 ring events, and I guess we'll let you talk a little bit about what happened in this, and you did get knocked out in the semis. But I do kind of want to look back because it hasn't. For as many times as you've won, for as many games as you won, for your 4 rings, and the 3 years that you've gone, you have made it to 8 final tables and 2 semifinals. But last year was a very different story than your first year and this year. And last year you didn't come home with any rings, and just kind of the, how that felt for you and kind of your journey with all of that.
Yeah. I think it's different for different people. So I'll just speak to my personal experience, which is that I have really, really high expectations for myself when it comes to like performing competitively. And then because I like have demonstrated that I do really well, I also feel a certain kind of way when things don't go well, for sure. So I think that I have probably unhealthy millennial standards for myself when it comes to
I don't know what you're talking
considering
millennial standards.
What I'm expecting to like get out of the event. I think one thing that was really helpful for me, even in the beginning, was that I did not come to the event for like money, right? Like that wasn't. It's like they advertise it. It's the big thing. I came for like fame and glory. That's actually how ridiculous that sounds. Like that, I wanted to like see if I was one of the best, and if I was one of the best, I wanted people to know that I was one of the best. That was like genuinely the goal. And so walking away without like a win, like last year where I made 3 final tables and walked away without a win, it was pretty heartbreaking. It was definitely devastating, and it still met what I was looking to get personally out of the event, because my goal was that recognition, and people were like, oh man, like tough break, like really impressive run. Sorry, like you didn't get there. Like strangers as well would be like, they'd hear the story and they'd want to get involved, and they'd want to like, share their experiences about how the event had gone for them. And I think that's a really lovely part of the event. I'll also add, just in general, like I think going to these kinds of events with like other folks, if you have friends that are interested in going, or if you are going alone, like making friends is actually like a really, really friendly event. I would say that I knew only, I don't know, a handful of people in my first year, and now like by first name I know like 50 people at least, and everyone is then like invested in how other folks are doing, and it really adds to the excitement when it's like you have a bad day but someone else is having a good day. You can get hype for them, and there's something that's really pretty exciting about that, in a way that like, if I go to like a more traditional board game convention, it's like, oh cool, what'd you play today? That's neat, that sounds fun, but like really it's about your experience of what you're playing. This actually allows you to like vampire off of other people's experiences in some way, which is cool.
Well, didn't you do that last year specifically with Arc Nova?
Yeah. You're right. Like last year I did not advance to the semifinals, unfortunately, because I didn't win an event. But the player from Finland, he hadn't played Arc Nova. It was like his randomly selected game, or he played it like 1 or 2 times, and I stayed up with him until like 3 or 4 in the morning, telling him everything I knew about Arc Nova, and he like went on to win the next day. So I got to like bask in the reflected glory of his like
so
success.
Good. And he won it again this year. He also won Arc Nova for the second time.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yes.
he double ring won. He like defended his thing, same game in the semifinals. Crazy.
And ended up back in the finals again that. And it's such a good story. And you know what, to your point about like vampiring or whatever is, obviously, being president of the fan club back home, all of us were obviously very, sad that you got knocked out last year. But then hearing that story, knowing how hype you were for Jukka, this is the gentleman from Finland, and suddenly we were all rooting for him. And then this year, when you got knocked out in the semis, and I saw he was in, I was rooting for him. I've never met this guy in my life. But it's just, from that story and all of that, it's just really cool.
There's certainly some like weirdness, I think, with the format and the way things are structured, but I will say that it does a good job of generating more emotional highs and lows than like traditional board gaming weekend would. And like, right, the observer perspective, right? Like, Anastasia, you're like obviously super into games, but like I had another friend who was following who's like a very casual board gamer, and he was like tuned into every stream, didn't understand what a single card was, but he was like screaming his head off. Like, he was like, "Who won? What's the score? Tell me the score." And that's really cool.
I mean, I think it brings in the spectator vibe of sports that I guess you probably don't have with WBC, because that's not live streamed or anything like that. But like, from like a personal tiny anecdote thing, like I always used to think that baseball as a game was boring. I just didn't understand it. Like, what are you talking about? Like, it's so slow. There's no clock. It's just one person throws a ball, one other person maybe hits it.
To the chagrin of every baseball fan ever.
Yes. No, but then I moved in with somebody who loved baseball, and we hung out, and then I learned to love baseball, and I was really into it. Like, I would listen to every single game on the radio, and like I was really into it for years. And I've thought about that a lot since then, because it's kind of interesting to go from like, this is the most boring sport ever, to like, oh my gosh, when's the game on? I'm going to listen to it on the radio. And I think such a huge part of it is the community. Like, I never was going to get into it if my roommate / one of my best friends was not also into it. And of course, as I started to get into it, we then would talk about it and, talk about this thing and remember when that thing happened. And that's what we're doing literally right now, is we're like reminiscing about these things that have happened in the past. And I think that's very cool. And I have a hard time thinking of any other setting in board gaming where this could be. I mean, the closest thing would probably be like professional poker or something like that, but that's high stakes and very serious, and this is not. And like in our little chat Discord things, there'd be someone's like, "Oh, I just saw Nick sigh. I don't know. This is a bad thing."
That's very getting into Nick's head.
Yeah, exactly. And like we were almost spectating and commentating it ourselves, essentially. And,
we were.
And I just think that's. I mean, most people probably who are just like going to tune in are going to have that feeling. But I think the more you lean into it, the more you're getting out of it. As a person who, like, I don't know if I'll ever even go to this event, but like it was like, oh, it's WSBG time. Like, let's time to see how Nick does. Essentially,
Yeah, I think that I'll admit, and again, I've not gone. I feel like I've gone, but I haven't gone. But I have, obviously partaken in the ways that I've partaken. But the first year, I'm not gonna lie to y'all, like I had a lot of mixed feelings about the concept of playing board games for money, and I think that I wasn't sure how I felt about it, and I wasn't sure what it was going to bring out in people. And I think, I have come to realize that that community element, that feeling of getting to know people who are really good at their craft, having that underdog story, or that the lore of the champion coming back or defending the title, like rooting for people and rooting for everyone, just rooting for the best player at the table. Like, it is kind of cool. It is kind of cool. And it does kind of help to balance out that part of it that the money element that I just wasn't so sure about.
Yeah. I'm honestly, to be honest, I'm still not so sure about it. I think that if I had my druthers, I would flatten the prize structure a little bit. It's very, very top heavy, and they do a really great job of having the like vibe of, it's not about winning, it's about having a fun time, it's about playing a good game, it's about being a good sportsman. And they succeed at generating that through like persona and conversation and how they present things. But the prize structure betrays that like cultural aspect. And so I think that if I had my druthers, I'd flatten everything down, kind of spread it out a little bit. They already do have like prizes for the people. They like give away a game table, like a pretty sweet game table. It's like
those
a raffle.
Are not cheap.
Like, yeah, exactly. Like, there's other prizes that like people get. They do like trivia. You get like random prizes or like discount for future years, or like stuff to the game hall. They'll like give away copies of the games that they open and things like that, or at like a steeply discounted price. So there's very cool stuff that you can get. But given that like I think that like prizes would be more fun than big prize at the top.
I mean, you've made it to the final table 8 out of 12 times, and you've not made any money, right? I mean, you've gotten discounts to coming the next year.
I've gotten discounts to return, yes.
Which is money.
But
yes, that is kind of an interesting point, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, on their website, I'm like, quote unquote, global rank 1, and it doesn't like amount to actual like cash, right? And that's because it's not. Again, I don't think that's really what the event is about. I don't think that's really why it's successful. So it's an interesting to interrogate, because it's like clearly people like to compete. They want to have, or at least the people that attend this event. I'm not saying everybody, but like there is some thirst out there for going somewhere where the stakes matter, right? Where you know that you're sitting down, and after you play for a couple rounds, you're like, the people that I'm playing with here are all terrifying, and I've never played with any of them before, right? Someone in one of the chats referred to me as the final table guild boss, right? And like the idea that like you go and like play, it's like that's exciting, right? Like there's something very cool about that.
Yeah. So I have a question for you. How do you handle the stress of the final table? Look, I think I'm a pretty good board gamer. I have beat Nick Henning at games. I beat him last week at a game.
It has happened. Yes.
It has happened. And it happens, obviously, I mean, we just talked about that. That's the thing about board gaming with the luck and you said, you're not going to win every single time. And so it's really not about that. But I do think that there's a mental component to these tournaments, right? No matter how good you are, no matter how much, is the luck going to go for you, like whatever, like to sit down at a table with the kind of stakes that are there, whatever those stakes are, even just that you've been playing games all day and you want to win this, and to have it live streamed. I don't know, like, we've been talking about our friend Hung. He talked about how that messed with his head a little bit at the final table. Yeah. And you've sat at so many. That's the part I just don't think I can do. I just don't think I can do it.
First of all, you can. You absolutely can. So I know what you're talking about, right? Because right now I have the privilege of experience, right? I have played competitive board gaming, like for money or not for money, for a very, very long time. And I still, even now get like nervous or have certain jitters or feels or feel bad moments or things like that. But I've played so much. I've won, I've lost. So like, I don't get too shook up at a final table anymore, which is a really big advantage in my court. Because I can see it on other people, because I used to have that feeling, right? Where you're sitting there. I mean, my arms used to shake when I was playing, right? Like I
really?
To put your hand out flat and look at it, like I couldn't pass that test some years ago, right? Like that it used to like really freak me out. So just like familiarity with it, and like a couple of things that I would say as advice for folks who are like, how do I handle like going into the situation? One is, it is still just a game. You're playing the same rules for the game that you've played a bunch of times. So it is helpful to keep that in mind. I think people also underestimate how much they need to treat their body well throughout the course of this event, or really any competitive gaming event. Yeah. It doesn't sound crazy, right? I'm not out here like doing manual labor building something. But if you play 12 straight hours of board games, you are fried. It is just mentally taxing. And you need to make sure you're drinking water, hitting the restroom, getting food in between rounds, having a friend who will hook you up with food between rounds, like bringing snacks with you. That kind of like body preparation is not to be discounted at things like this. And so people they run on adrenaline, right? And adrenaline is really helpful for hunting and really bad for board gaming.
That's the tagline of the episode, everybody.
Yeah.
What do you think, John? Do you think you can do it? Do you want to go?
No.
No, I can't do it either. I like my role. Head of the fan club. That's good.
Yeah, I think it would be fascinating to experience that, but also I think my feeling about how well I would do, I'm just like, I'd probably get knocked out in the first round. And I'm sure a lot of people feel that way and whatnot. But man, I love tension in games. Like, that is definitely one of my favorite elements of games. But it would probably take a long time to get over that feeling of I'm going to be so disappointed in myself if it flops. And it sounds like, Nick, even you have had to deal with that last year, and you're still.
I mean, for sure, the disappointment is real. In the first year, I mean, just to full transparency,
Ticket to Ride.
In that first year, when I played that Ticket to Ride semifinal, I walked out, I shook hands, walked out of the room, and started crying. Like, I called Anastasia in tears, being like, I lost, I got so far. Like, it's okay to feel upset, right? That is a part of, like, it's what I said, emotional highs and lows. Like, it generates something there, and like that human experience of like feeling frustration, is not inherently bad. It is a reaction to like the circumstances, and then the thing that you can control is how you conduct yourself. And so that's actually, I think, the biggest challenge is just knowing in advance, I'm going to feel a certain way. I want to make sure I conduct myself in this fashion when if that happens, not when that happens, if that happens.
So it sounds like you're going back next year?
Yeah. So winning the 2 rings, I don't win any money, but I do get rebates to return. It is an expensive event financially. It's also across the country for me, so it's like not easy from the flight perspective. So I've been on the fence about returning, but I'm gonna give it another go. We're gonna keep on trying to roll it until we flame out or rise to the top, I guess. But right now I'm just riding the fence, as it were.
Yeah, that's awesome.
You did this year though have someone sponsoring you though, right?
I did, yeah. Rooks in Montana sponsored.
How did you hook up with them? Because it worked. I looked them up.
I don't know anything about this.
The general manager attends the event, and I was telling him that I was not so sure about returning this coming year because of the financial side, and he was like, "Well, we could sponsor you." So I know that that's actually the case for the gentleman that comes from Finland, Jukka, as well. He was sponsored by one of the big Finnish board game stores, whose name is eluding me right now, but that is a hilarious little like side thing. Like I would have never thought.
It's even more like sports.
It's like a real thing for an event like this.
All right, well, Rook's Game Store in Montana. Thank you for sending Nick Henning to the World Series of Board Gaming so that I could have a great week.
Yeah. Actually, Rooks, you're just gonna get more free advertising. This is what they get for sponsoring, right? They're running their first convention in Montana in May next year.
Oh, cool!
Oh, that's so fun. That's really fun. Yeah, I noticed that. I didn't know about it, and so anyways, yeah. No, I mean, I think this is. It's a cool little event. I'm not gonna lie to you. I mean, I think I shout out to the World Series of Board Gaming for finding a way to take something that would frankly be really niche. I mean, as we know, like competitive board gaming, obviously you've been doing it at the World Board Gaming Championships for, since, in utero, but it's actually, wait, Mama Henning, let's give another shout out here. Henning. Mama Henning has gone all 3 years with you, correct?
Yeah. She plays too.
Yep.
She didn't the first year, and then she was like, "All right, I'm gonna play."
I think that is awesome. So yeah, I mean, and I will admit the highs and lows they translate to those viewers at home, and it was very fun to cheer you along. It was very fun to cheer everyone along. It's cool. It's cool to see. And so I'm very curious to see how it continues to grow and evolve and what it looks like in the years to come.
Yeah, they've impressed me. I am curious to see how it grows and develops. Obviously, like, some of the changes they've made I think are wonderful. Some I don't agree with as much. Everybody has like the perspective of different things. So it will be really cool to see how it goes year over year, how they continue to develop this, and then also just like, does this become a thing that other people try out in various places? And I know that WSBG is kind of like trying to like, not like franchise, but make like small feeder events in various areas. So if you're curious, there's a decent chance that in your area there's some kind of feeder event that you can attend, get a taste for how it feels. And, you know, like we mentioned, our friend Hung, he won his way into this event by attending Dice Tower West and winning a like qualifier event there. So you don't have to go big to get your first sense of like, is this something you would like to do?
Yeah, well, I've got big plans for you, Nick. I'm thinking, I don't know, we got a few more year run, then we're going to Tom Brady it up into the broadcaster's booth. I mean, I've got a
we got to start talks with Nike. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
10-year plan.
Fan club, manager, whatever you need.
Well, thanks for letting us pick your brain about it, Nick. It's fun to relive it and just, I don't know, I feel like I learned some things today that I didn't even know. And it's a neat thing.
Yeah. Well, I think that's going to bring us to a close. If you want to learn more about the World Series of Boardgaming, specifically Nick's experience, or you want to learn more about the kind of strategies that go into it, you should check out his channel, which I am plugging for him, called Phoenix, spelled like phonics. Okay.
Look in the description for a link. And also,
there you go.
I don't know, did you go to WSBG? Have you been curious? We'd love to hear comments and stuff. Leave a comment on the YouTube version of this one if you're just listening to it. There's a link in the description as well. There's all sorts of links. Check out the links.
Go to all the links. And you can see Nick, actually. You can see him playing in the Lost Ruins of Arnak Green event and the Earth Ring event. If you want to check that out with commentary, I think Nick is going to be doing his own commentary as well on all the games that were played. So just some fun stuff.
I'll add links to those as well. Every link.
Links for
all
everything.
The links. Link party. Spelled phonics. Have a great one, everybody.